Today in Campechi's Corner, we're going to look at dividing rational expressions. When we are dividing rational expressions, it's just like dividing any other fraction. My first fraction stays the same, n minus 2 over 2n. Now again, if there's a greatest common factor, if I could factor it, I would do that. My division sign becomes a multiplication sign, and then I take a reciprocal of my second fraction. So my n minus 2 was a numerator, that becomes a denominator, and then my denominator of n plus 5 becomes a numerator. From here I see what I can simplify, so I have n minus 2 is exactly the same, and then my final answer is n plus 5 all over 2n. In number 2, my numerator x plus 3 cannot be factored at all, so I have x plus 3 as my numerator, 4 is my denominator. My division sign becomes a multiplication, and then I take a reciprocal of my second fraction. So I have 3 over 2x plus 6. Now again, I can pull this apart, so let's just rewrite what we have, times 3 over, now I have a greatest common factor of 2, so I'm going to factor out a 2, and I'm left with x plus 3. Now my binomials, I have exactly the same x plus 3 and x plus 3. So then my numerator is going to be 3, and then I have a 4 times a 2 as my denominator, which is going to give me 8. 3 over 8 cannot be simplified anymore, so that's my final answer. In number 3, this time my numerator is y squared minus 9. I have a perfect square minus a perfect square, so I can pull that apart. I can factor it. I get y plus 3 times y minus 3. My denominator is 4y squared. My division becomes a multiplication, and I take the reciprocal. So this is y minus 3 really over 1. So when I take the reciprocal, I get 1 over y minus 3. And I realize I have a y minus 3 in my numerator, 1 in my denominator, so I'm left with y plus 3 all over 4y squared. In number 4, in my numerator, I have 3x squared minus 6x, so I have a greatest common factor of 3x. I'm going to multiply that by the quantity x minus 2 all over 2x plus 1. My division becomes a multiplication, and again I'm going to take the reciprocal. So this x minus 2 is going to become my denominator, and this 4x plus 2, I'm going to do this all in one step. I realize I can factor out a 2 as my greatest common factor, and I'm left with 2x plus 1. So I can just write that there, so I don't have to rewrite everything. Now at this point I have everything pulled apart that I can. I've factored what I can, so I realize what I can simplify. So I have 2x plus 1 is exactly the same. And then let's see what I have. I have 3x times x minus 2. Look, I have an x minus 2 here and x minus 2 there. So then I'm really just left with 3x times 2. So my final answer is 6x. In our final problem for today, we have m plus 2 over m minus 1 in our first fraction, neither of which can be factored. My division becomes a multiplication. Now m squared plus 2m is really a numerator, so that's over 1. So I'm going to take the reciprocal. 1 goes on the top now. And when I factor my numerator, I have m times the quantity of m plus 2, since m is my greatest common factor. So let's write that on the bottom here. And my denominator, m times the quantity of m plus 2. And then I realize I can simplify my m plus 2. One in my numerator, one in my denominator. So my numerator is 1. And my denominator is m times the quantity of m minus 1.